If you're seeing this message right now, it's not by chance. Something big is about to happen in your life, but before this miracle arrives, you need to understand one thing. It's always in the hardest moments that change happens. Maybe right now you feel like you've fallen again, like you're stuck in the same cycle, like everything you've achieved has just disappeared. But stop and think. Before this feeling, where were you? You were growing. You felt like everything was flowing, but then, all of a sudden, resistance came, exhaustion, doubt. And there's a reason for that. Whenever a major transformation is about to happen, the universe tests you. It wants to know if you're ready to receive what is already yours by right, and the question is, how will you react? Because if you stay here, I'm going to show you exactly what's happening behind the scenes of your reality, and why this fall is the final stage before your miracle. The reality around you is not fixed. It's not an unchangeable fate, nor a series of random events. Everything you see, feel, and experience is a direct reflection of the frequency you emit. This frequency isn't determined by external factors, but by what happens inside you. Your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs shape the energetic field that attracts situations, people, and experiences. If your vibration is anchored in fear, scarcity, or frustration, the reality around you will respond to that state. The universe doesn't judge, punish, or reward. It simply reflects. If internally you feel stuck, your life stagnates. If you believe things always go wrong for you, more circumstances will show up to reinforce that belief. This doesn't happen because the universe wants to test or challenge you, but because it simply responds to your energetic output. And that's why, even after so much growth, you might feel like you've fallen back, because your transformation hasn't yet become your new dominant vibration. You've experienced moments of clarity, felt expansion, seen changes happening, but at some point, something familiar pulled you back. This happens because your mind is conditioned to what is known. The old you, the same patterns, the stories you've told yourself for years, they still try to keep you anchored in what's already been built. You can move to a new city, start a new job, leave a relationship, and enter another. You can try to find a sense of a fresh start through new surroundings, but if your internal vibration remains the same, sooner or later, the same situations will repeat. Because real change doesn't happen on the outside. It happens within. What keeps people stuck isn't the outside world, other people, or circumstances. What keeps someone stuck is the frequency they're holding on to. And this frequency can't be changed on a surface level. You can't fool the universe with empty words, forced positive thoughts, or attempts to mask what you really feel. Your true energy is the one that manifests when no one is watching. It's what vibrates in you when you're alone, in moments of silence, in the emotions that rise effortlessly. But here's the most important point. This is normal. More than normal. It's a sign that real change is happening. If nothing were changing, you wouldn't even notice this resistance. The back and forth between the old and the new is a symptom of transition. What's happening right now isn't failure. It's not a return to the past. It's an energetic adjustment. You're learning how to stabilize yourself in a new vibration, and that process takes time, presence, and patience. None of this means you're stuck forever. It just means you need to take full responsibility for your frequency, because when that happens, reality has no choice but to respond, and this is where the real game begins. You feel like something is pulling you back, like you're about to break through an invisible barrier. But suddenly, out of nowhere, a force pushes against you and keeps you stuck in the same place. It feels unfair. It feels like the harder you try to change, the harder it gets. Like a part of you is sabotaging everything. And guess what? It is. That part has a name. Ego. The ego isn't a villain, but it also doesn't want you to move forward. It was programmed to keep you alive, and to your primitive mind, growth is a risk. Leaving your comfort zone means stepping into the unknown, and to the ego, the unknown is dangerous territory. It doesn't know what comes next, so to keep you safe, it sabotages you. And it does this in the most subtle, manipulative way possible. It convinces you that you haven't changed, The ego's strategy is simple. It uses your own mind against you. It makes you believe that if you slipped up, then everything was for nothing. That if you're feeling discouraged, it means your growth was just a temporary illusion. It attacks you with thoughts that sound so real, you don't even realize you're being tricked. Nothing has changed. I always end up back in the same place. Maybe I'm just not strong enough. But stop. Look again. If everything were lost, why would this be bothering you? If you truly hadn't changed, you wouldn't even notice this back and forth. The only reason you feel like you've fallen is because, at some point, you rose. And that's the part the ego doesn't want you to understand. If you rose once, you can rise again. That frustration you're feeling, that sense of fighting against something invisible, that was not a sign of failure. That's the sign that you're at the edge of a new expansion. The ego only starts screaming when it realizes it's losing control. And now you have two choices. Let it convince you that nothing has changed, or recognize that this resistance is just the final stage before your next evolution. The game is right in front of you. The question now is, are you going to fall for the trap, or are you going to push through? The universal rhythm. You will never be on top all the time. You didn't realize when it happened, but you were conditioned to live this way. From the moment you opened your eyes to this world, you were given rules, beliefs, and absolute truths that you never questioned. You learned how to speak, walk, and behave, but above all, you learned how to fit in. They told you that life follows a script. Go to school, get good grades, find a job, build a family, pay your bills, and one day, maybe one day, you'll be happy. And like a river flowing through a path already carved in the earth, your mind followed this flow without realizing it was asleep. But then, something broke that narrative. It could have been a book, a video, an intense experience. It could have been a loss, a crisis, a sudden realization that made everything feel different. And for the first time, you saw the edge of the fishbowl you had always lived in, and now you want to break through that barrier as fast as possible. You want to change overnight, erase years of conditioning in a snap. But stop. Breathe. The human mind doesn't work like that. It doesn't accept sudden change without resistance. You spend years, maybe decades, adjusting to a specific reality. So why do you think everything should be different in just a few days? Maybe right now you're noticing something you've never seen before. Maybe in this exact video, in this sentence, in this moment, something inside you is waking up. The veil is starting to lift. You're opening your eyes to something that has always been there, but you just couldn't see before. Let me give you an example I know you'll relate to. There was a bird that spent its entire life in a cage. It never knew what it was like to fly. Inside it had food, shelter, and a small, familiar world it understood. Until one day, the owner of the house forgot to close the cage door. Freedom was right there. The endless sky, the wind calling, the whole world waiting. But the bird hesitated. It stood on the perch, staring out, afraid. It couldn't understand how this could possibly be safe. It was too vast, too uncertain. It might fall. And so it did what it had always done. It stayed where it was. The problem was never the cage. The problem was that after so much time trapped, its mind had become the real prison. And maybe now you're realizing that the door to your own cage is open too. Change doesn't happen in a rush, but it starts with a single step, a single leap. And that leap could be happening right now. What if I told you this isn't a coincidence? That this exact moment, the fact that you're hearing these words, is the beginning of a miracle unfolding in your life? What if where you are right now isn't a mistake, but part of something much bigger? You feel like you're waking up, but at the same time, you notice that some days everything seems to fall apart. The clarity you had yesterday is now hiding behind doubt. The excitement that was pushing you forward now feels heavy. Your mind starts to question, am I going backwards? But look around. Nothing in nature grows in a straight line. The universe moves in cycles. The ocean rises and falls. The sun rises and sets. The seasons change. Life expands and contracts, and you are part of this rhythm. The mistake is believing your spiritual journey should be any different, that after awakening you'd never feel fear again, that after your first expansion you'd never face another fall. But in reality, it's the opposite. The higher you rise, the deeper the descents can be. The ancients already knew this. In the Kabbalion, one of the most influential texts of Hermetic philosophy, there's a principle called the law of rhythm. It states that everything in existence moves in cycles, and that the higher you rise, the stronger the swing in the opposite direction. That means feeling low isn't a sign of failure, but a natural response to growth. What determines what comes next isn't whether you fall, but how you handle it. Maybe you've heard of Nikola Tesla, the genius behind breakthroughs in electricity and magnetism. In his studies, he said that if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Tesla knew that everything in the cosmos moves in oscillating patterns. Nothing is static. Energy always shifts between poles, and your life follows the same logic. You rise, you fall, you rise again, but you never return to the same place. Every fall brings a lesson. Every descent teaches you how to climb higher. You might feel like you're reliving old pain, but the version of you facing it now is no longer the same as before. The mistake isn't in the oscillation. The mistake is in resisting it. What hurts you isn't the natural movement of life. It's the belief that it should be different. Suffering doesn't come from the fall, but from fighting against it. When you understand that every low moment is part of your evolution, something shifts. Frustration turns into acceptance. Doubt transforms into understanding. You realize that growth isn't a destination. It's an endless flow of expansion and contraction. And maybe right now, you're exactly where you're meant to be. You only fell because you had already risen. What if your fall wasn't a sign of failure, but proof of your growth? You can only feel like you've fallen because, before that, you rose. The awareness you have now, that discomfort of feeling like you've regressed, only exists because, at some point, you experienced a higher state. If you had never moved forward, you wouldn't even notice that something had changed. So stop for a moment and think, where were you before you felt this fall? You were growing. Your mind was more expanded. Your energy was vibrating at a different frequency. Your perception of the world felt clearer. You started seeing beyond what used to limit you. And then the shift happened. But contrary to what your mind wants you to believe, this doesn't mean you lost everything. It doesn't mean you're back in the same place. It means your system is adjusting. Your frequency is trying to stabilize at a new level. This is the secret of evolution. You rise, you fall, you rise again. But never in the same way. Because this time, you come back stronger. This time, with more clarity. This time, with more awareness and preparation. It's like a climber scaling a mountain. They don't go up all at once. They move forward, find a resting point, adjust their breathing, regain their strength. Sometimes they have to descend a little to find a better path. But every time they climb again, they know the terrain better. Their muscles are more prepared. Their endurance has increased. And what seemed like a descent was actually just part of the climb. The question now isn't, how do I avoid falling, but rather, how can I use each fall to climb even higher? And here's the most important part. There's no wrong path. The mistake isn't in taking a detour, but in believing you should be somewhere else. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, if I had made a different choice, my life would be better now? This idea that you could have done something different, that you should have chosen another path, is an illusion. Because the universe never wastes an experience. Every choice, every mistake, every apparent setback is part of the journey. If something happened, it was because it needed to happen. Even if you don't understand why yet, even if it doesn't make sense right now, everything is serving a bigger purpose. If you had taken another path, you still would have learned what you needed to learn, because it's not the path that defines the destination, it's you. So if every step you've taken so far has had a purpose, why are you still focusing on what went wrong? The mind has an automatic mechanism. It latches onto what's missing, what didn't go as planned, what caused pain. This happens because, for centuries, survival depended on our ability to detect risks and dangers. But now, this programming is working against you. Every time you fixate on what went wrong, you activate that frequency within yourself. And since everything in the universe responds to the vibration you emit, that energy starts attracting more of the same. But what if you shifted your focus? Let me give you an exercise right now. Close your eyes for a moment and remember a time when you overcame something difficult, something that seemed impossible. But somehow, you made it through. It could be a phase in your life, a financial struggle, an emotional challenge, a fear you conquered. Feel that energy. Recognize that this strength still exists inside you. It never left. Now imagine that frequency expanding within your body. What would it feel like if you allowed yourself to vibrate in that confidence every single day? You have a history of overcoming challenges, but if you don't look at it, you'll never be able to activate that part of yourself. And that's exactly why the universe puts you to the test. The challenges in your life aren't here to punish you. They exist to make you stronger. No new phase begins without a test. Every time you're about to break through a barrier, life presents you with a choice. Are you going to act like someone who's still stuck in the past, or like someone who already understands their own power? What's happening right now isn't a punishment, it's a test. The question is, how are you going to respond? Will you give in to the old pattern of guilt, fear, and frustration, or will you use this moment as a portal to become even stronger? The choice has always been yours, so now you know. Every challenge was a test. Every fall was preparation. Every setback was an adjustment in your frequency. And now comes the most important part. The miracle is on its way. You can feel it. Something inside you knows that change is coming. It's not just a wish. It's not just positive thinking. It's a feeling, a quiet intuition that something is shifting behind the scenes of your life. But here's the one detail no one told you. Miracles don't happen for those who aren't ready to receive them. The opportunity can appear right in front of you, but if your mind is still stuck in the old frequency, you won't see it. You could be just one step away from what you've always wanted, but if you don't believe you deserve it, you'll find a way to sabotage yourself. The universe can only give you what your vibration allows. So the real question isn't, when will the miracle arrive? The question you should be asking is, am I truly open to receiving it? Because receiving a miracle takes more than hope. It requires a commitment to the new version of yourself. It means letting go of old beliefs, releasing the weight of the past, and stopping the habit of giving your energy to what no longer aligns with you. Have you noticed how sometimes people ask for change, but deep down, they're afraid of it? They say they want something new, but they hold on tightly to what keeps them stuck. They refuse to let go of the old, yet they still expect the new to arrive. That's not how it works. The universe can't fill a space that's already occupied. If you want something new, you have to make room for it. If you want a new phase, you have to stop repeating the patterns of the old one. And maybe right now, it's finally time to allow it. You're already ready. Now you just have to accept it. And when you do, you'll see the universe deliver what has been yours all along. Now that you understand what's happening behind the scenes of your life, there's something you need to see. A special video has been set aside for you with a message that might be exactly what you need to get through this phase and finally receive the miracle that's already on its way. So don't leave just yet. Click on the video appearing on your screen right now, and I'll meet you there.